lasted 78 days with something like 1,800 Serbian civilians being killed, with the Serbian infrastructure being demolished, and with what I call ecocide, which was the release of tons of carcinogens from bombing chemical and petrochemical plants. And unfortunately, as a result of those releases, which have been inhaled and ingested by a lot of Serbian civilians, there will be a lot of casualties and a lot of cancers in Serbia. Now this war ended and that negotiated settlement was reflected in UN Resolution 1244. This resolution says clearly that the people of Kosovo have the right for substantial autonomy, but within Serbia. In the text of the resolution, 3 times sovereignty of Serbia is mentioned, and independence is not mentioned at all. So the resolution was violated by the U.S. policies, and not only that the U.S. Resolution 1244 was violated, also it amounted to a violation of UN Charter, and it amounted to a violation of the Helsinki Accord. So we had a massive violation of international law. So somehow this country of ours has become an international law pariah. We don't observe any longer international laws. Now, after the passage of Resolution 1244, Kosovo became a UN protectorate, with NATO providing the military muscle. And that mission, which will be 9 years old in June, was a dismal failure. Some 300,000 Serbs and Roma and other minorities have been expelled from Kosovo in the term that now is popular. It's called ethnic cleansing. In addition to that, several thousand have been murdered, and 150 Serbian churches and monasteries have been demolished. Now the Serbs and Roma, I'm talking about remaining Serbs and remaining Roma who are in Kosovo, they live now in enclaves, which are protected by the NATO force called KFOR. But they have no freedom of movement. And can you imagine in this 21st century that there are people in the middle of Europe who have no freedom of movement? I think it's absolutely unprecedented. Now, for 120 days, there were negotiations with regard to the future of Kosovo. The negotiations were sponsored by the U.S., by the European Union, and by Russia. And they allocated only 120 days. And this was, again, the U.S. influence, because they didn't want any negotiations to last much longer than that. On the other hand, we have a case when Israel and Palestine cannot settle their differences for 60 years. On the other hand, it was expected that the Serbs and Kosovo Albanians would settle their differences in 120 days. And the worst of all is that the Kosovo Albanians had no incentive to negotiate, because President Bush has promised them independence irrespective. So all they had to do is just go through the motions of negotiations, and simply they knew that in the end they're going to get independence. And when the negotiations, so-called negotiations, were over, then Washington instructed the Kosovo Albanians to go through the unilateral declaration of independence. And they were also told that they have to wait until the Serbian presidential elections to do that. And they did wait, and on February the 17th, they announced their so-called UDI, Unilateral Declaration of Independence. And the first country to recognize independence from the standpoint of the Western countries was the United States. In violation of the UN Charter, in violation of the Helsinki Accord, in violation of UN Resolution 1244, and 4 other resolutions. So it's pretty much a massive violation of international law, and by virtue of doing that, international law has been, by and large, dismantled. So you're going to have a jungle from now onwards in the international affairs as a result of this move. Now, kind of question that I get from various American friends of mine is, how come that the United States could do this? Well, the United States could do this because Serbia is a small country of some 8.5 million people, and the country is essentially defenseless. So they didn't have much of a risk doing that. They, for instance, cannot do this, let's say, to Kurds in Turkey. And there are 20 million of Kurds who don't have their country. And the United States would never recognize Kurdistan simply because the Turks wouldn't allow that. So we have on one case the case of the Kurds, and on the other case we have a case of Serbs. And here's a perfect example of hypocrisy in our foreign policies. Now, as I said, the difference between the Kurds and Serbs is that now with regard to the Albanians, there is a country called Albania. And what's the point of creating another Albania, another Muslim Albania in Europe? And this is pretty incomprehensible to a lot of my American friends. And so I basically, my answer to that is either the decision makers in the State Department are totally incompetent, or they essentially work for another country.